Hello, 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 and welcome. So, um, yes, I hope you had a very nice day up until this point, and I hope we'll have a very nice day going forward. Hmm, nothing, nothing else comes to mind right now. So let me just quickly check the audio, and then, yeah, I'll try to figure out what I'm doing today. All right. So, what are we doing? What are you doing? What am I doing? What are we doing? Not too certain. I'm kind of inclined to do some of this again. You know, some of this practice. Hmm. Maybe. Maybe not. Oh, okay. The wind is pretty damn strong today, so I'll actually have to step away, close some windows, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I have returned. Now, um, the windows are secured for storms and thunders and thunderstorms and all the other things. Hmm. That's draw sessions. Ah, right. Yes, yes. The creature designer. I remember. Hmm. I kind of want to do some more stuff like this, primitive forms. Yeah, I could I could try doing some primitive forms, perhaps even with paint. Maybe that would be fun. Certainly something I would like to try. What the hell is this? What are you? Hmm? Why do you exist? Terrible. Okay. So I'm kind of feeling like I want to fix this because it's horrible. Actually, let me take a less aggressive eraser here. I feel like I have one. Yes. Okay, let's see. Let's see what we can produce here. Not quite sure what I was thinking. This looks like a very quick and dirty sketch. So let me try and get into that kind of energy here. Okay, we want a quick and dirty sketch. Something that looks a bit better than whatever this is. So let's say it's possibly a bit too. Let's just go like this for now. Any particular hair I wanted to go for? I don't think so. Nothing I had in mind, I believe. It's just whatever kind of hair thing, I would assume. I should probably try and memorize how, hairlines work usually. Because I'm having trouble figuring that one out right now. Would certainly not be a bad idea, I think. Alright. I'm wondering where I should be placing the nose. Here, maybe? Kind of fierce looking. I'd assume this was supposed to be a woman. Or a female looking character, whatever. So let's do a little bit more like this. Maybe. Something like that, perhaps. It's not terrible. Could be better. Could be worse. You know. But that's a tale as old as time. You know. And there's probably, I'm very certain actually, there's a saying about this exact thing in every language. Something to the effect of that what ifs don't really matter, you know? And I guess I could do like a kind of, what's her name? Frankie from, was it Foster's something House of Imaginary Friends? I don't quite remember the name. You know, just some characters. Blue, Frankie. Don't remember the name of the little kid though. So there's that. That's not terrible. No, could be worse, could be worse. Alright, let's see. What this is looking like. I'm thinking it's pretty okay. I mean, as we've established, could be better, could be worse. Actually, maybe I wanna erase that part here. Kind of want to keep the hair up until maybe this point. Or maybe I don't need it as much. Going all the way down here. I don't remember if Frankie had some like hair in her face. I do remember her hairstyle is pretty similar to Timmy Turner, which I think came out later, way later. But I'm a bit flaky on the release dates of all of these kids shows. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt. I want to keep the face here, or rather the outline a bit lighter. You know, still I want the round face going on here. Then we'll do some erasing for what's inside the eye here. So, I've recently been thinking, for, well, obvious reasons, if what I'm doing is actually helpful, right? And the usual doubts you have when you're trying to learn something as difficult as this. Because like everyone, right? Everyone, and at this point even machines, are better than you are, Literally everyone. Probably a child is better than me at this current stage. Because at least they draw with confidence. They are confident in knowing nothing about it. But they just enjoy the fact that they are drawing, Which I'm doing too, It's not like I'm forcing myself to do this. It comes natural at this point. And I enjoy it, I enjoy doing it. I enjoy drawing. Though, obviously, sometimes it can be very frustrating. You know how it is. And so I've been kind of, just thinking about my methods and all that. And then I came across this video, which, by his own admission, he was like, well, everyone knows this stuff already, but let me just rephrase it so you might understand it better. The point of making drawing a routine, you know, regardless of how much progress you're making each day or overall, is that the alternative would be not giving yourself a chance, you know, to get better ever. Because the issue, to a very large extent, is that the minds are split about what to do, right? Everyone is like, oh, what book did you use to study, say, anatomy, or what kind of mentor did you have? What kind of mentorship did you take to improve as fast as you did? You know? The issue with all of this is simply just that it's less about. No, let me rethink this actually. Let me rethink this, because I don't wholeheartedly agree with the notion that there isn't a, not necessarily proper way, but a better way of improving, you know? I do think there is such a way. But the issue I see, or rather this guy was pointing out, is that most people seem to just be focusing on finding a shortcut of sorts, you know? They think that if they have the right approach, the learning will somehow be easier, you know? And that's just simply not true. In fact, if you had the right approach, the most optimal way of learning, I am 100% sure it would be a tremendous amount more difficult than what I'm doing currently, you know? Not even by a small margin. Like, I wholeheartedly believe that, at the very least, you know? So, what am I trying to say here? Essentially this, you can't get around the grind. Regardless of what method you pick up, whatever it is that you think is the right way of doing it, you cannot get around the grind. That much should be obvious, you know? And to obviously a lot of people it is, but they still end up asking the same kinds of questions. Instead of asking, well, how did you make this a habit? Or perhaps asking, did you make art a significant part of your life, your daily routine, you know, your daily life, to improve as fast as you did? Instead of figuring out how people used art in their lives and perhaps improved as a consequence of that, they are trying to figure out what material resources they are using to figure out this one piece of advice that will get them from point A to point B immediately, you know? And I personally think that's what this guy was talking about, you know? And I personally believe that is also a pitfall, you know? And whenever you are trying to make this your routine, you know, drawing, I don't like the chin here, or the jaw rather. Whenever you try to make it a habit, or when you get into the habit of doing this daily, let's say, or in regular intervals at the very least, you know, you will inevitably end up asking yourself if what you're doing is correct, because now that you've immersed yourself, and now that you're observing other people's art, you know, you will inevitably wonder if you aren't improving too slowly, you know? That's always going to be a part of your art journey, you know? Everyone has these questions. Everyone. There's no person that didn't stop what they were doing at one point, you know, and were wondering, well, am I learning this properly? Because it's just that difficult of a task, you know? It's just that much that you just end up asking yourself those questions. Perfectly normal. The only thing you can really do is try and guarantee it's the only kind of guarantee really about art you can have is an unknowable percentage at success, at improvement. So it's like a big RNG factor. You have to think of it like that, I think, you know? It's kind of like RNG. It's randomly generated in a way, you know? And you want to move from point A, which is where we are, or where I am, right? And you want to move to point B. Where the professionals are, you know? And that's not necessarily a black and white kind of deal, because, you know, you can argue, well, being a professional means selling your art, making money with it, which you can do a lot earlier than, I don't know, having to learn up until the point where you are as good at drawing illustrations as, I don't know, what's the name of that illustrator? Recently did a cover for Susei in like a Japanese what's it called, like convention in a way. I don't remember her name. Oh well, happens. But you don't essentially you don't have to wait until you're Bob Ross, you know, to be able to make money with your paintings, you know. So the line of being a professional and being a beginner can be blurry at times, you know. This doesn't mean that there isn't an objective evaluation, that you can't be like, well, I'm not quite good enough yet, because you actually can say that without it just being you beating yourself down or beating yourself up, really. There is an objective standard in a way, you know, but it's kind of vague, or it can be vague in some senses. I suppose what really matters is how believable you can sell the experience, you know? Because every art piece is exactly that. How well can you sell the experience that you are trying to convey, you know? How much can you make other people believe in it, essentially? In the ruse, you know? And the tools that help us with that are obviously things that we talked about yesterday, you know? The five, let's just go with the 5 pillars. you know. So composition, value, color, composition, value, color, form, and I believe technical skill. You know, so these are the tools that we use when making art pieces to better sell the experience. To better sell the experience. But if you find technically it's possible to find the audience for any skill level, technically it's possible, because that's really the largest point. Damn, there's a lot of flower dust on my entire setup. Jesus. Oh, oh Lord. Oh man, this just had to come in, huh? How did that even fly around all the way to here? Damn, I hope my clothes aren't dirty. Let me just close down the window, because it's like, you know, springtime, and everything just gets really dirty when the wind hits. It's kind of like annoying. It's nice. It's a nice kind of annoying, you know. It's not like the end of the world or anything, but it can stress you out. So whatever. Back to what I was saying, you know. Technically, it is possible, and that's really what people mean when they say there isn't. Well, art is subjective, you know, which is true to an extent, but most of the time it's just used as a shield to not improve upon your 5 pillars, you know, to justify in the eyes of those who actually work, who really put in the hours to improve on their measly art skills, why they aren't doing the same, you know. They're just trying to pretend to be just like anyone else in art while not even putting half of the effort in, you know? That's really the only type of person that's like, well, art is purely subjective. I disagree. No, I disagree. You can very much distill the beauty standards of every and each culture in the world and make art pieces that the people living there find attractive, interesting, or otherwise, what's the word? Pleasurable to look at in a way, you know? So there are standards. The standards just vary from location to location, you know? What someone in Asia or Japan specifically, or perhaps China finds attractive, might not at all align with what someone finds in, I don't know, Bangladesh attractive, or in London, England, Scotland, you know, in, like, I don't know, Louisiana. So, and we know that to be true because, well, guess what? Even just by the simple deduction of that, well, in fact, different people live in different locations of the earth, therefore, they must also have different beauty standards simply because they are different people. So it's like, you know, anyway, there are obviously objective standards, but I can't tell you, because it's just that big of a field, if you are going to find your type of audience for the art style that you want to create, you know, or the kind of atmosphere and just all in all the type of drawing that you want to produce, you know. I can tell you, however, that putting in the hours to try and learn will pay off. Might not be today, might not be tomorrow, might not even be in a year, depending on how you learn, you specifically, and what you want to learn, you know? Because if you're like, well, I want to learn architecture, and that's the only thing I want to learn to draw, that will give you an easier time, you know? If you can essentially limit the scope of what you want to learn to the point where it's very few or very select few topics, then you'll end up, quote, improving faster than other people, because that's what you will be focusing on. So if you have that kind of motivation, or goal rather, the only thing that you're now lacking is the motivation to just stick it out. And that's really what separates the wheat from the chaff, I think is the saying, right? You know, the people that talk about wanting to improve in art and the people that actually improve in art. The difference really only is that they are clear about what they want to achieve, and that they put in the work to actually give themselves a chance at improving. So, yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to say. And that's really what the whole video was about. And so, you know, I've just been a bit agitated because I've been doubting myself too much, I suppose. But it's just, it's nonsense anyway. It's not like, you know, a lot of these words have been overused, you know. But when I mean I'm nervous, it's like the most minor version you can possibly think of. It's like, you know, 5 minutes of being like, I wonder if I could do something better. The issue is just that if you do this every day, that stuff still accumulates, you know? And so I just want to be careful not to ruin the fun for myself in all this, you know? Simply because I just can't trust myself to I guess keep going, you know? I suppose that's the real issue here. So yeah, maybe not. Maybe I'm just overthinking this a bit. It's kind of like a, how to say this? When you write about something, you know? When your hunch essentially turns out to be true. I can't quite put into words the feeling. Like, there's like a specific word to describe this, I feel like. Anyway, that's what I'm honestly feeling currently. Because I've been approaching art as like, well, you don't need the whole mentality thing. You don't need to worry about your feelings that much. And while it is, and I agree with that at least, very much a introspective field. So when learning art, you learn a lot about yourself as well. I do agree with that, you know. However, that I still was like, you just have to do this every day. It will eventually accumulate to the skill that you want, which is true. But if you don't focus on your studies, you know, if you don't isolate the things you're bad at and try to improve them through repetition specifically, that's when you won't get better. That's when you really will get stuck. So yeah, I've just been sticking to what I thought you'd have to do for art, which is just sticking it out, just doing it for all of eternity if necessary. Really. So yeah, turns out I was right. Because in some parts, I'm seeing the improvement, you know? It's not everywhere, because I'm not, you can't do everything. You can't learn everything at the same time either. So you just have to make a decision to cut off the access, the access once in this specific context then, because I would love to be able to draw like some the now. What's a respectful way of saying this? Well, the original author of Berserk, incredible drawing skills, like insane. Honestly insane. I don't quite remember his name though. I want to say something with M, Murata or something. I'm not quite sure. I'm a bit flaky on that, May he rest in peace. I would love to be able to draw like him, right now, this second. If I could, I would do it. Why wouldn't I? Why would I not want to be able to draw like that? Honestly. I just can't though. Wait, I was trying to make a different point. But I kind of forgot. Trying to think about what his name was. Oh, that sucks. That kind of sucks. What was I saying about? What was I talking about? Something to the effect of... Just sticking it out. Wait, I'm gonna be cheeky about this. I'm just gonna rewind. I kind of want to talk about this more, but I forgot it. Give me a second. Yes, okay. I remember now. I remember. Or rather, I literally just looked at it. I listened to it again, so of course I would remember. Yes, I was just talking about the approach to learning. Because you can't learn everything at the same time. And I think I said something to the effect of I'm seeing the improvement gradually, I can just do certain things that I couldn't before, or can do them a lot better. And the reason why this is going to be gradual for everyone, this type of improvement, is simply because you can't learn everything. Regardless of what it is that you think you have prepared yourself, whatever type of plan you think you have that will definitely get you to be the most perfect artist in the world, and I guess I'm meaning someone like 10,000 hours, not in a malicious or, you know, envious way or anything like that. But regardless of what it is that you think you will you have as a plan to definitely get you to where you want to be, at the end of the day, you must make a very vital decision. What are the areas that you truly want to improve on? And to do that, you need to reflect on your art. I guess that's what I was talking about, right? So, like, art is this introspective um, practice, So it's very much linked to your ability to see yourself and your flaws, to be conscious of where you are and be honest with yourself. This looks fine. I can live with this being here, chilling out. Perhaps in some time I will come back and rectify it again. But regardless, you know, I lost my train of thought again. I don't know what's going on today. What was I trying to do here? Looks like a climbing pose, like trying to vault over something. I would assume this is the leg. I like this. I like this. I've kind of always been decent in a way, or better at these overly cartoonish styles than what I'm currently learning. Even as a child, I was very good at drawing styles like The Simpsons, or copying them rather. But yeah, it's not the kind of style I want to learn, so it is what it is. But I'm not too set on a goal anyway. I want to make amazing illustrations, obviously. I want to make amazing illustrations. I want to be good at drawing things like the type of images that you would put into epics, and yeah, I don't know, the type of images you would hang on your or on your wall above your fireplace. That kind of, I don't know, the I'm not well versed on the theory of art. The how it came to be, how it improved, that sort of deal. I don't know the eras or like the epoch. I don't know the English word for this. Don't know if the Renaissance was the beginning of the art revolution in a way, where they finally figured out how to do perspective in a way. Though actually, now that I'm saying it, I think that was a very big part of the Renaissance. Yeah. I just want to make the kinds of images and paintings, that you would pay someone for in that time. To make a portrait of yourself, for example, or make like some painting about a battle. I want to make not just art that looks nice, which isn't bad by itself. Obviously I want to do that. I do want art that looks nice, but more so I want to make art that inspires people, to think about themselves, to think about the world they live in, to perhaps take a chance and a risk at becoming who they should be, you know? Which is, it's a weird thing to say, I feel like. But I do, in a sense, believe in that there are parts about humans, about your personality and mine, that we had no hand in creating, and that if we try to deny them, try to deny that part, we'll end up, destroying ourselves, essentially. And I don't know if I would call that a soul necessarily, but at the very least, it's something that's very similar to that, I would assume. Not too certain about the whole origin story of where souls are from, in a way. What the word truly means, rather, is what I meant to say. But yeah. So I just want to make these kinds of images, while also, obviously, I don't have an issue with a cute girl, cute female looking character or an attractive looking female character. Not at all. In fact, a lot of the art tutorials I watched back in the day, back when YouTube would still allow you to upload such, my main source of these tutorials was Mikey Mega Mega, which is who, if you ever seen any piece of art from him, it's like, very voluptuous woman, very attractive women. So obviously also, action stuff, that kind of deal. A lot of fan art. So it's not like I have an issue with that. I just personally more so want to focus on, heroic kinds of tales. I'm interested in that very much. Probably because I'm a man, and given the current times, what the world looks like, I don't think that's a very unique aspiration to have, to tell heroic tales, to give hope to people. So, yeah. That's basically what I want to do. I just don't know how to get to that point exactly. And I don't know really any, at least not by name, any artists that would draw something similar. Although, maybe that's not entirely true. This is one guy that mostly paints. I think his name starts with something like a W. Wallop? Wallop? Or something along those lines. Like a very, very weird kind of name. Yeah. WLOP. He actually is the closest to what I've seen would come close. He's the closest to what I would aspire to draw like, Not all of his images, obviously, but quite a few. I like the regal look he's going for a lot of times in his images. The storytelling he does with his larger illustrations, I like the way he paints in general. And so, Yeah, I guess a big inspiration for me then would be Wulop. Wulop. W-L-O-P. Wulop. I don't know how to pronounce this. Or rather, maybe not inspiration. But the kind of artist. I guess that's the same thing, right? Someone who you want to be like, and an inspiration is pretty much synonymous, no? I kind of feel like, though, in this context, it isn't exactly. Maybe because there's more meanings to the word. And I'm thinking of a different one. Well, he's at least, very close to what I want to be like. Although I'm not entirely certain if I want to. How much I want to be able to paint, you know? Or maybe the lines at that skill level blur anyway, literally and figuratively, to where it's one and the same anyway. And if you think about it, there's not actually that much difference for like when you're drawing with lines, essentially, like I'm doing here right now, and when you're like using paint, when you're trying to paint, rather. While there is some difference, obviously, just in the approach, I don't think it's too different from one another to say that they are well, they are kind of different categories, but I don't quite know how to put this into words, so I'll just drop it for now. I guess what I want to say is that drawing and sculpting, which is a big part of painting, is very similar to each other. In that, thicker lines represent thicker shadows, which in the sense of a sculpture means a form that's further inside of a different form, perhaps, or where less light, falls. So if you think about drawing in the same way as sculpting, I think that could be beneficial, So if you think of line weight as, how to say it, a measure of light, instead of the trivial categorization that most people use, I think, which would amount to just thicker lines. I mean, I guess someone who actually understands what line weight is about wouldn't think that, so I guess most people don't do that. But perhaps what you would think about when you're a beginner, and you're learning all of these like interesting well, what's the word? Phrases, not necessarily terms, right? When you're starting out and you're learning all of these different terms, a lot of the times you will just simply not know what to do with them, Obviously, you'll understand someone saying the word, and perhaps you watched a video where someone tried to explain it. You might not have this intuitive understanding that would then allow you to implement it, into your drawings, perhaps. If you think of line weight as amount of light falling onto form, and line weight means, thicker or thinner lines, really, in case you didn't know it, and I'm just talking gibberish. I guess you'll have you might have an easier time figuring it out, you know? Though it's only all of these concepts regarding line weight and light and how sculpting is similar to drawing, you know. All these differences are really just of academic nature, not so much of practical. Because, you know, when you're drawing anything really, it would be more difficult to not try and put in shadows where you think they would look good, you know? Trying to make lines thicker where they are supposed to describe, or how to say this, put an emphasis on a specific form that's neighboring it, you know, a line or whatever your thought process might be for when you're using thicker lines and thinner lines, you know. What was I saying? I'm talking too much. Guys, I like how this turned out, but I'm starting to overwork it now, and it will end up looking bad. I'm kind of feeling like drawing today, just by how I just spent an hour roughly doing this without even realizing the time flew by that quickly. So I guess today we'll do some drawing, not so much painting, but perhaps I'll draw something that I then would like to paint. We'll see. Yeah, I'll see you at the end of the stream. For now, I'm going to mute myself, rest my voice, and just focus on drawing. Hope you learned something. Or I hope you learned, yeah, I hope you learned something from the yapping I did. Perhaps food for thought, you know. Perhaps there was something that intrigued you in what I said. But there's a lot of people out there that have better advice than I do, perhaps, you know. I'm just a dude who wants to show you all of the things I do to improve, you know. Because outside of this, what you're seeing these 2 hours, sometimes 3 or 4, you know, of drawing or streaming is what I do every day. There is no real practice besides that, you know. Occasionally I take out my sketchbook, my very small pocket sketchbook, and just try and doodle. But most of the time, you know, I've gotten accustomed to doing this at a specific time of the day, and that's kind of relaxing, and I don't want to ruin that, you know. I kind of feel like my mind would how to say this, I guess stressed. I think I might get stressed too much if I what's the word? I think it starts with E. Immerse, right? I. E, I, whatever. If I immerse myself too much in all of this, you know, I feel like I would miss the chance to just rest, you know? And that's a big part. Rest is the most important part, aside from doing the thing you want to improve in, to actually see results. And I still have to work on the resting, you know? Being a bit more, you know, getting my sleep schedule in order, I guess is what I want to say, is a big part of what I'm currently trying to fix or do in terms of rest, you know? So, yeah. I talked enough. I'll see you at the end, or when I have something else to tell you. Until then, put on your music or listen to the same background music for the 5,000th time or whatever. So, yeah, enjoy yourself, have fun. Don't take everything too seriously, you know. Try to balance your need to be introspective, or rather, try not to confuse being introspective with constantly doubting yourself. You know, there's a time and place for all of these things. You know, that's my piece. That's all I wanted to say. I'll see you later. Okay, hello. I've returned. Um, I'm not too happy with the cat, honestly. Like, I've drawn a better cat, but I'm really feeling the body ache right now. So I do like what I did here. I like this, you know, especially the fact that I didn't try to, you know, recreate this face perfectly, but it's roughly, you can tell it's, made in reference to this or by reference from this, that's obvious. Same pose, roughly same facial features, you know, eyebrows too. But I really like the changing the expression here a bit. Yeah, didn't do much with the ears, but it is what it is. Tried to shade in here and there, but at some point I felt like I'm just overworking this. Anyway, oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to add to the stuff I said in the very beginning, how to structure your learning and all that stuff. Um, what you need to be able to learn well, I would say, is have a baseline of your skills, right? I think I talked about this yesterday at the end of the stream or beginning, I'm not quite sure. Taking snapshots of your current art skill. Just trying to draw something by imagination, I guess. But controlling the variables so that, for example, you have one image where you try to draw two characters with no time limit. The only reference you're allowed to use is, so it needs to be a fan art, and you only allowed to take reference to draw their clothes or understand the colors, not copying a pose or anatomy, that kind of stuff. And then you repeat this process, say every 100 days or 50 days or however you want to structure this, and perhaps you even go ahead and do another drawing where you'll try to, how to say it, for example, draw a landscape within 2 hours through traditional means, by pen, for example, on a piece of copy paper, right? So by controlling these variables, because art is a large, how to say it, very big creative field, that's the word. And so by controlling these variables, you can take a snapshot of your current skills so that you have a baseline and understand where you are currently. And then if you have like an artist to aspire to be like, then you have this roadmap in a way, So, yes. Anyway, I wanted to add something else though to all of that. Oh, right. To the idea of the baseline. You also need to understand that a lot, of the really amazing art. Let me see if I have a wallpaper or something. I do actually. Okay, this is a very nice image, personally. Let me show you what I mean. It's a very nice image. Something like this, right? The kind of art where you are like, damn, I want to be able to draw like that, you know? This sort of piece, you know, just from experience and from what other people said, I would assume took 80 hours to draw. Probably a bit longer. So, you know, you need to also understand how long these images actually take to draw and how many people work at some of these studios to produce stuff like this, you know? So, like, let's say splash art in League of Legends, you know? Or whatever. Um, 80 hours. 5 people working at one image, you know? Roughly taking them around a month to complete. Maybe a bit more, you know? So it's like, you can't just look at the amazing art, be like, damn, that's glorious. I want to draw like this. Learn, you try to learn, do your best, and work towards being able to create it, and then completely ignore the fact that this takes a lot of time. And then you end up doing a baseline sketch, for example, or just a regular sketch to see how good you are, right? To then be like, well, damn, I'm so bad, and it takes me so long to draw something, right? Because you have no idea about how long this stuff actually takes to complete, you know? I do have to say, this looks fantastic. This is fabulous, you know? Every part of this image I like. Anyway, I unfortunately don't know the artist. I wish I did. I found this at some point. I don't even remember where. It was before Pinterest, before I had a Pinterest account. So, you know, if any of you know the artist, perhaps you can tell me. I mean, I could probably put it into TinEye and see. But, you know, it's not the most reliable thing, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm gonna end it here. So yeah, try to keep this in mind and not beat yourself up over taking too much time to complete a piece of art or sketch or whatever. It's fine, you know? You're working to improve yourself, and speed will come with skill, you know? But you need to be carefully constructing your basics, you know? Your understanding, your skill in art. Because if you're only rushing stuff, you will never produce anything that's worthwhile. So, again, try not to beat yourself up too much. Like, it's perfectly okay, you know, for things to take time. In fact, that's the only thing you really do have, at least at this point, you know. So, if this is truly something you want to improve on and do, and say earn money with, don't be too afraid to actually spend the time that is necessary for you to complete the things that you want to. So, yeah. Again, too much yapping. So, I'm going to end it here. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you learned something or had fun while doing your own thing. Right, today is the last day of week 10. So, tomorrow is going to be a week in review. Yeah, until that point, until next time, right? Take care of yourselves and try to have fun whenever possible and relax, you know? Don't always think about art or whatever the hobby or skill it is that you want to improve in. Let yourself rest, you know? Let yourself calm down, find peace, and distract yourself, you know? Play a video game, go outside, talk to random people. I don't know, buy an ice cream cone without the ice cream. then turn around and buy the ice cream. I don't know. Whatever. Go bowling. You know, have fun with your friends, whatever. Take your mind off of, even if it's something create, or perhaps especially if it's something creative, just take your mind off it. Put together a schedule that helped me personally, where you say to yourself, okay, this is the time when I will draw, however much time that may be. For me, you know, it's upwards of 1 hour, sometimes 2, 3, sometimes 4, you know, sometimes 1 hour specifically, like on point 1 hour, because I can't keep on going. Whatever that may be, you know, it's fine. The point is consistency, making it a routine, but also allowing yourself to rest. So get good sleep, get a good mattress, treat yourself, you know, sleep is very important. If you don't get the right sleep, the right amount of sleep, you'll end up learning nothing. So anyway, now I want to leave. I'll probably see you next time. So yeah, take care of yourselves. I said that already, didn't I? Oh well, whatever. See you then.